Hi, I'm Mike Gitlin. Welcome to another episode of our Capital Ideas podcast. Today, I'm excited to have Harold Law join us, an equity portfolio manager from our Hong Kong office. Harold's been at Capital Group for 27 years. Today, we're sitting down with Harold to explore how a magazine subscription created a spark for investing and why he considers himself to have a hunting dog mindset. Harold, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here, Mike.
All right, so you and I were talking, and I wanted you to share with others what you shared with me about how you got interested in investing. You talked about a Fortune magazine subscription and wanting to help your mom, but I think it's important for this group to hear that story.
Well, I got interested in business a long time ago when I was a teenager. The great thing was that Fortune magazine came out, and I was able to get a subscription with a 77% discount. And I thought this was a great way to learn about companies at that time. So I got a subscription. Now, for my mom, she got the worst investment advice of her life. She worked at a company and her manager said, you should buy our stock. So she bought her stock at the high.
That was her whole retirement, was just that stock.
Yes. And so she bought the company stock at literally the 52-week high, if not all-time high. And then the company went bankrupt. So lost all the money, nearly. So after paying full service brokerage charges, what little money she had then went to zero.
So there was not a lot of diversification in her portfolio. Would you say that's fair?
That was pretty fair. There was no diversification. And on top of that, I saw the fees that this broker made, which was more than what we had left. So that kind of irked me. And I said, we can do better.
Yeah. So you got involved in this business and you've done it for 27 years at Capital Group, which we're super grateful for. But you have a really interesting group of companies that you cover.
Mm-hmm.
You cover Indian tech companies and Asian banks and Korean small caps. All of these are part of your history. How does that come about? Can you share with folks how you end up with that sort of seemingly hodgepodge of coverage throughout the emerging markets?
Well, Mike, I basically go to places where nobody is looking. So I started covering Asian banks after the Asian financial crisis. So I covered Southeast Asian banks, Korean banks.
Late 90s.
Late 90s, 1998. And they were basically worth zero. They had gone bankrupt. And I said, nobody wanted to cover them. It's like, okay, nobody's covering them. This could be an interesting place. Sure. Give it to me. So I was going to India because going to India was difficult. I said, that's great. I want to go cover India. Indian tech companies were just starting up, Infosys, Wipro at that time. So I wanted to go there. Korea had gone through their financial crisis. Everything looked pretty bleak. So I went there. And then that's my love of investing, is go where nobody else is looking.
You wanted to go where it wasn't sort of well-trodden territory, but are you a natural contrarian, do you think?
I wouldn't say a contrarian. I don't seek out non-consensus. I just go to places where there's
undercovered, under-researched, underknown.
Or fear.
Or fear, okay.
Or fear, or it's new, or the ideas are different. So I like newer companies that are doing things different, that are shaking up things because people don't understand them. And so it's exciting to me. Sometimes people say that you just like paying, but I say that actually is helpful because to some extent, these companies are different.
And do you have a favorite when you look back and say of all these different areas where I went to find what others hadn't found? Is there a favorite, or is it just opportunistic and it's just part of the job?
My early success was covering India and discovering some of what we call the Indian private sector banks. And so I met these companies when they were small, like under $1 billion. And I was talking to the executives. I said, wow, you guys are some of the smartest bank CEOs around the world. And, I'd met people at Citibank or Wells Fargo, and it's like, you're way more impressive. And so I invested in these tiny companies. Like, why would you invest in these companies? And now the great thing is that over time, with the Indian economy booming, these stocks went up 50, 100 times. They've now become, at one point, I remember them having a larger market cap than even Citibank, very briefly. So it was very rewarding for our shareholders, but also meeting these people early on.
You talk, and I've heard you say it internally in different investment meetings, about the difference between a hunting dog and a kennel dog.
Yes.
How does that apply to, I think people would have a sense that they're different, but how does it apply to investing for you?
It was a phrase that was brought upon by one of our great investors at Capital. It was Jonathan Knowles, who was part of the small cap team, and I was part of the small cap team.
Retired a few years back.
Correct. And what he says is that, look, as an investor, a lot of times you can read research reports from other people. You can just sit back and be pretty successful. But the true success is when you go out, see companies in their own country, in their own office, look for ideas, and constantly meet people is where you get the great insights. And so you don't just sit back in your office looking at a screen looking for ideas. You got to get there out in the road and see companies in their home office.
Got to be present. You got to show up.
You got to show up, and you get to talk to as many different people with different views. So that's the theory between a hunting dog. You literally have to go out and look for your food every day rather than just sit back and be spoon-fed, as they said.
By the way, what a great lesson for anyone listening or watching this in terms of investing. You got to be proactive and be out there, not just sit back and look at the screen and wait for something to present itself to you. All your coverage, you must have had some challenges along the way, like all investors. What are some of those lessons you learned early on where you went to pick up the pieces somewhere, there was something uncovered or unloved, and it got even worse?
Look, the market at times is right. So sometimes you just got to admit defeat and move on. But a lot of times you've put in all this work to understand a company, understand management, and for whatever reason, people just don't realize that. And so it's patience. And that's the difference in sort of our long-term investing. You sometimes just got to hold companies when things don't look good and just trust in the management and your thesis that it's going to work out over the long term. And then your best idea is just do nothing.
Right. And so are you patient? I mean, let's think about your investment edge. And we ask everybody who comes on this podcast. I think we've had 45 investment professionals on. Everybody has a slightly different investment edge. So what would you say yours is?
I love looking for companies that are disrupting and changing the way we do things. And a lot of times people think, why would I ever buy this product or service? And I just stick with it. And eventually the market comes to believe the same thing. The product or service works. And then you just got to hold on to it for as long as possible.
Yeah. So when you think back over the last 5, 10, 15 years, what are some themes that have played out? You invested in them early. While you're not a contrarian, you were somewhere where others weren't at that time. So what are some investment themes that have really played out for you over the last decade?
I remember investing in India. I went there and everybody said, why would you go there?
So what year? Give us a year.
It was 1998.
Okay.
1999, you went there. There was constant inflation. The rupee always depreciated 3 to 5% every year. So you're literally losing money every year.
Just by owning the currency.
Correct. And the market had not gone up. It would go up, down, never go anywhere. But I said, look, you have some of the most smartest, brilliant entrepreneurs there. They call themselves promoters, if you can believe that, because they promoted their stock, but they also owned the company. And so you ended up with some of the smartest people that knew how to operate in the most difficult environments. But you also had this tremendous economy that was growing long-term, and it was underpenetrated. And so just investing there or being present and finding these people early, it was great. You made a lot of money over time, but nobody believed in the place.
So nearly 30 years later, a lot of folks now are investing in India.
Correct.
I think Capital Group, we happen to be one of the largest public company owners of stocks in the country. But for the next 30 years, is India still that kind of a place where you see the entrepreneurs, you see the high growth, you see an opportunity to have better than average returns relative to the rest of the global markets?
I still believe in India. I believe in a lot of the emerging markets. I love investing in China, even though there's been this tension between US and China. There's just great entrepreneurs, and they work tirelessly.
So, Harold, if you think about it, when you look back post-global financial crisis, there was this extended period of time where two things worked really well. the S&P 500 and the US dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And in recent years, the last two in particular, and it seems to be accelerating now, that whole generation of folks who really just stuck with one country and one currency are investing globally more and more and finding opportunities in India, China, Middle East. Do you think that's going to continue? Do you think we're going to see over the next decade this period of time where investors really do become global investors and get more diversified in their exposure to both companies and currencies outside of the U.S.?
I believe so. Like, don't get me wrong. The U.S. has so many great advantages. They invented capitalism, the stock market. You have some of the best companies in the U.S. But everybody looks at the U.S. and says, I want to be just like them. And so they are copying, mimicking, and countries are adopting the same capitalistic modes as the U.S., funding great companies and trying to replicate and be just like the U.S. and nurture their own great companies. And I think that's going to spread around the world. And you're starting to get a lot of that going on right now, which is great.
The way Martin Romo, who was on our podcast, is our chairman and chief investment officer, as you know, but for others, the way Martin said it to me was, it's and not or.
Correct.
So the U.S. has wonderful companies. It's 65% of the global market capitalization. And there's this massive opportunity elsewhere in the world to also take advantage of investing. So that's your mindset, is it's a both. It's
a both. It's a both. You look for companies in the U.S. that start things, but there's great entrepreneurship all over the world.
Yeah.
And they basically do things that are different, and they influence the U.S. companies to replicate what they do as well.
So you travel a lot, like you said. You got to be present. You got to show up. Management teams, when I ask some of our investment professionals, most people say it's important to get to know the management team. But some people think it's nearly everything. You have to know them, believe in them, trust them, talk with them, iterate with them. How important to you are management teams and getting to know them?
I think it's incredibly important because you got to understand how resilient are they? Do they know how to navigate a rapidly changing world? And, if anything, the world's gotten more complex and is changing ever faster. And so understanding management and how they can navigate this world, which is changing so quickly, is very important in having conviction to hold companies when things are tough or things look very bleak. But they ride it through. I remember investing back in Apple when Steve Jobs came back, and it's like, the Messiah's come back. And, he was the heart and soul of the company, and he disrupted people. He did things very differently. And when he came back, everybody's like, oh, no, that company's washed up. They've lost it. And then he turned, at that time, the company's worth $6 billion. Can you imagine? One of the most valuable companies today.
Trillions of market cap.
$4 trillion.
Yeah.
When he left or he passed away, he had brought his company from $6 billion back to $500 billion. And now changed all the way we do things.
Leadership matters.
Leadership matters.
Yeah. We have a lot of content and things to continue with. I like sort of towards the middle of these discussions to do the office treasure hunt. Now, I couldn't take it physically out of your office. So we have a picture on the screen and I have a picture in my hands. Can you describe what this is?
This is my lucky plant. So, when Chinese believe in feng shui, it's like making your office, your home, a pleasant place to work. And so, your office needs something that's living, that brings you luck. So I went out 26, 27 years ago when I moved to Hong Kong, and I bought this plant, which is very colorful. But as you know, I travel a lot, and you come back and you haven't watered the plant for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it looks dead. But then you water it and it comes back to life. So this plant has been with me for 27 years, and no matter what, it always
comes back.
It springs back to life. Just like you're worried about the markets, they're falling, you get depressed. And I look at this plant and I said, if this plant's not going to die, no matter what the market's doing or how bad it is, it's going to come back to life.
So did you have to repot it, or is that literally in the same pot as it was 27 years ago?
It's in the same pot. One of our great assistants, Vivian. She is a master green thumb. So she does try and give us fertilizer. And so she does help me nurse it back to life.
Well, Vivian has her first shout out on this podcast as one of our assistants, and she deserves it. Keeping that plant alive for 27 years is heroic. I had a pleasure of living in Hong Kong for 4 years. I have a sense, obviously, from that period of what feng shui is, but can you explain to folks what that is?
It's basically just making sure that your office or home is a pleasant place that invites luck into your life. And it means like positioning your furniture or colors to be pleasant. And it facilitates the flow of good air, as they say, into your life. And hopefully that helps you with your job, your health, and all that.
So outside of the positive nature of keeping this plant alive for 27 years, are there other stories of feng shui in the Hong Kong office you'd share?
Yes. There are what we call unlucky offices.
Oh.
Yes, because they're either too dark, there's not enough light or windows. And so sometimes we have what we call a feng shui master look at people's offices, see what they can do to change it to bring better luck. And so for one of our houses, he walked in and he just walked out and he just shook his head.
I'm not going into that office.
No. He basically says, whatever you do, just get him out of this office. And this happened to be our semiconductor analyst. And I said, wow, you cover semiconductors. I believe in semiconductors. This is not good. So I moved him into what we considered a brighter office.
Better feng shui office.
A lot more natural light. And so we moved him in early October. That was probably marked the low in the semiconductor industry in Asia. Then something called, AI came out and
a
little change. And if you can believe it, his sector not only went up, doubled, it went up 5x in 2 years. And so whether you believe it or not.
It doesn't matter if you believe it, it happened. I want to talk to you about the Hong Kong office. It's been around for a very long time at Capital Group. Mm-hmm. We were early to Hong Kong as a group of investors. How do you help lead that office in terms of culture and bringing new people on board and integrating them into Capital Group? How do you think of that?
Well, the Hong Kong office was a very small office when I started. It was like 3 to 5 people. So we've always been a very tight office across everybody, from our assistants, reception, trading, because there's only 5 of us or 6 of us. So there's no walls. We all go out together all the time. So if you ever go to the Hong Kong office, we'll always say, Mike, do you want to go out for a coffee? And we'll go downstairs for a coffee. And then lunch. We never eat in the office. We always go outside to grab lunch or bring it back.
But now we have not 3 to 5 people. Now we have 75 people.
Yes.
So how do you keep that growth from just a few folks to 75? How do you maintain that culture with so many more people?
We just get larger and larger venues.
So you still invite folks, you just have to increase the size of the venue.
Yeah, so far it's still working.
Give me a couple mentors, 1 or 2, but who's helped you in your career?
Well, I mentioned Jonathan Knowles. He was a legend in that he was tireless in going to see companies. And so when you're an early analyst and you're going to see companies in India or Korea or China, it was very difficult to travel. And having somebody that believed in you and would go visit the companies with you no matter where you went. And we ended up partnering or investing together on more than 15 or 20 companies. And all of my early successes where these companies went up 50 to 100 times was Jonathan believing me early and coming to see the companies and reinforcing what I saw in those companies or management teams. And having somebody to reflect on that and believe in you was very important. And so from that, I learned to always be on the road, always look for new companies, and at best, go with analysts as much as possible to see companies together.
All right. You mentioned China.
Yes.
And it's interesting today, people wonder about the U.S., China, and the relationship and whether long-term, are there still opportunities to invest in China? The folks that I've had on this podcast said it's company-specific, but company by company, you can find great opportunities. What's your perspective on China?
I love going there. They're incredibly innovative. Like, they believe they have the American dream. They want to be successful. They love going to American schools if possible. And they admire US entrepreneurs. And that's what they want to create. They want to basically disrupt the world as much as possible. So, as they said, it is company specific, but I love investing there just because you have all these great entrepreneurs that work tirelessly.
And it's so much more accessible now with the train that you can take from Hong Kong to Shenzhen so much quicker.
The infrastructure that's been built out is incredible. Like, they have the largest high-speed train network. Literally, it used to take, the equivalent of going from Los Angeles to San Francisco. It takes like 35 minutes. That's how fast the trains are. They're like 400 kilometers an hour. It is incredible how fast you can go anywhere in China at this point.
I want to get a little bit more about you. So outside of Hong Kong, and having lived there, I do know you got to get out.
Yes.
It's wonderful to be there and it's wonderful to go. So when you go outside of Hong Kong, where do you like to go?
My favorite place is probably Thailand. And I love going there because people there are so friendly. It's called the land of smiles for a reason. People always have a positive attitude. They do smile. Now, if you ever go to Bangkok, they're like, traffic's terrible, things sometimes don't work. But they have this attitude of mai pen rai, which basically, it doesn't matter. You just smile through it. It is what it is. And you just, like, that's life. But they always have this positive attitude. So I love going there because of that positivity.
And you also like food.
Yes.
I know that you're a foodie. Mm-hmm. What's the best meal you yourself cook? If you're having me over, I haven't been invited, but that's okay. But if you were having me over to your flat in Hong Kong, or you were having me to your place in Thailand, what would you cook for me?
My best dish from my friends or colleagues would say is my Cantonese steamed fish, which is usually an expensive dish at a Chinese restaurant. But the skill is you got to go to the fish market and pick out a live fish. Ideally, you bring it back home live or killed very recently, and then you have to steam it exactly perfectly within 9 or 10 minutes.
Okay. Wow. That's
it
very
sounds
specific.
Simple.
Yeah.
It's very specific, but it's hard to do well.
Last question on food. I'll do the wine part of Food and Wine. Do you have a favorite wine?
I do. It's a Spanish wine.
Which one?
It's called Vega Sicilia Unico.
Rob Lovelace introduced me to that.
Yes.
I know that's one of his favorites too.
And the special thing about this wine is that it's a hot place and the wine is made meticulously. But the owners believe that this wine requires time and they don't release the wine until they think it's ready. And that takes a minimum 10 years. Wow. So if you can imagine, this vineyard makes their wine and stores it at their place for 10 plus years before they think it's ready to be released. Most vineyards will, bottle it within a year or two, and then it's up to you to store it for 10 or more years.
They want to store it themselves.
But they don't believe it's ready. So it's 10 plus years before they even release it. But it doesn't even get great until 30 years. So it's sort of like investing. You just got to wait and let it compound till it's perfect.
So they're judged by their 30-year number. We judge folks by their 8-year investment result. They judge 30 years. I want to end up where we end up every podcast. And that's we are going to give to you the Be Obsessively Grateful mug.
Mm-hmm.
We will send it to Hong Kong so you don't have to put it in your carry-on. What are you grateful for? You've been here for 27 years. You've added a lot of value to our clients. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we're obviously grateful for you and what you've done for investing and for helping others internally at Capital Group and also our clients. But what are you personally grateful for?
I've been lucky to have been able to have the opportunities to join Capital, but also I've been lucky in getting in great schools and learning about the world and traveling around the world at this point, because a lot of people don't get that opportunity. And so ideally, I'd love to give back more money back to education so other people get the opportunity to do what I do.
Well, I appreciate you being here. I hope I get invited for the steamed fish.
Sure.
Okay. But thank you. In all seriousness, thank you for leading in our Hong Kong office in a positive way and for helping our clients. And I hope you had a good time. I did. And I'm sure folks got a good chance to get to know you personally, which is always great.
Well, thank you for having me here, Mike.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.